Mario Kart Wii natively supports 4 controller options: the Wii Wheel, Nunchuck, Classic, and GCN controllers. Each offer unique advantages and disadvantages that make them distinct from one another in all forms of play, which naturally begs the question when making a choice: which controller is the best? To answer that, let's go over what they all bring to the table. Let's start with the Wii Wheel, or the Wii Remote if you prefer. Mario Kart Wii is the first game in the series to utilize motion control, which was a major selling point for the Wii and contributed to the marketing of the game heavily when it was released back in 2008.
Yeehaw! Howdy, it's me, Cowboy Jet! I don't know what's happening to me.
To steer, just tilt the wheel and watch as your vehicle turns as it would do like a car in real life. However, unlike a real steering wheel, the Wii Wheel doesn't correct itself upon making a turn, nor does it stop when reaching a maximum input, which presents difficulty in discerning the intensity of almost every move you'll be making. In addition to steering, gesture motion is also used to perform tricks via shaking the controller. While this on its own isn't a major problem, moving the controller is already tied to steering, so mid-air adjustments and techniques involving tricks are made very impractical and hard to perform. As a consequence of these issues, using the Wii Wheel often feels imprecise and inconsistent in just about every situation, although it does have a few beneficial applications. To nobody's surprise, the Wii Wheel has the greatest range of input values of any controller, making it useful for Mushroom Gorge glitch time trials and tool-assisted runs. Overall, the Wii Wheel is a fun novelty, but generally not a very reliable controller in practice, and although it's certainly possible to find good success with it, learning how to do so may prove to be an uphill battle. Thankfully for those interested in driving invisible vehicles, snapping the wheel out of your dashboard and attaching a tadpole creates a new controller, the Wii Remote and Nunchuck, colloquially known as the Wii Chuck or just the Nunchuck. The first and most notable change granted by the Nunchuck is the addition of an analog stick, which provides an actual physical threshold for its input range and separates steering from tricking. This fact alone already makes the Nunchuck much more practical than the Wii Wheel at just about everything, as it shares the ability to use motion for tricking and wheelies, allowing both actions to be completed by flicking the Wii Remote up, right, down, and left, without any interference on your turning. Along with it just being easier to use, the Nunchuck is an incredibly common and often inexpensive accessory that just about anybody who owns a Wii likely has, so if you're looking for a good controller that can be acquired quickly and cheaply, the Nunchuck is a great option that has very few glaring weaknesses aside from being hard to use on CTGP's 200cc mode, where brake drifting is made awkward to access thanks to the Nunchuck only having one easily accessible brake and drift button, B, meaning a downward D-pad press has to be used instead. Moving on, we can now see that our tadpole has metamorphized and reached the intermediary stage of its growth cycle, the CCP, or Classic Controller Pro, which is a variant of the regular Classic controller that has hand grips and 4 shoulder buttons, making it more closely resemblant of other contemporary controllers in its habitat. Despite still having the Wii Remote attached, the CCP features no use of motion inputs. For tricking and wheelies, you must instead use the D-pad. Although this is more reliable than flicking the Wii Remote to do these actions, with a normal grip, having to move your thumb between the analog stick and D-pad can be pretty cumbersome and technically limiting, so this controller is often played with claw grip, where the index finger lies across the D-pad, the middle or ring fingers sit on the shoulder buttons, and the thumb moves on the top of the analog stick. Using this method, it's possible to have immediate access to all the necessary buttons for playing, which makes certain techniques like chain drifting relatively easy. However, this grip probably isn't what most people think of when holding a controller. I mean, just look at it. Ergonomic may not be the first word that comes to mind, but if you can get past that, the CCP and CC are very consistent and good controllers for the familiarity they can provide to those looking for a more traditional way to play. Well, at least as traditional as this can be. We now come to the Frog, our final stage, the GCN or GameCube controller, which is what I personally use. This controller is quite similar to the CCP in that it again doesn't support motion inputs. In fact, it's the only controller that doesn't support the Wii Remote at all, as it instead plugs directly into the Wii. That being said, the GCN has no need for batteries, so the worry of your controller dying during a race or disconnecting isn't an issue as long as you don't pull the plug. As for the layout, yeah, we're gonna have to claw again. However, unlike with the CCP, the D-pad is positioned underneath the analog stick, meaning steering must be left to the index finger, which isn't always very well suited to the task. Despite this, using the GameCube controller like this isn't necessary at all times, as with quick enough hand movement, using your thumb for both the analog stick and D-pad can work well enough in most instances, allowing the claw to be reserved only when needed. Now, onto the actual feel of the controller all around. It's pretty nice. The triggers are satisfying to press, all of the buttons and sticks are responsive, and the shape of the shell is comfortable. However, there's one problem with this controller that can't be ignored. The D-pad is not very nice. It's much smaller than the CCP D-pad and not very reliable for inputting directional tricks, which is a major problem for time trials and shortcuts. I can count numerous times I've failed the Toad's Factory late cut, or sent myself flying off into the abyss because the D-pad inputted a left or right trick instead of an up or down trick. In an attempt to fix this, I decided to file away at the outer rim of the plastic underneath the D-pad to reduce the chances of making any diagonal inputs, and even with that, I still occasionally get side tricks. Although this doesn't ruin the game for me by any means, it's quite an unfortunate blemish in an otherwise generally great controller. Not accounting for the price, of course. And now that we've covered all 4 controllers, the question must be brought back. Which one is the best? You really want to know? Well, forget everything I just said, for there is one controller that completely invalidates the viability of any of the aforementioned. It's a controller so auspicious and finely tuned for succeeding in Mario Kart Wii that it is often believed to be a myth by the majority of the player base. So yeah, I'm talking about the
Here we go. So divinely here, performing for you. If you know the words, you can join in too. Put your hands.
That's right. No analog stick, no buttons, no motion, no problem. These are the DK Bongos, indisputably the best controller for Mario Kart Wii. I mean, just look at them. I don't even need to explain why they're so good. There's literally no need. It'd be pretty bogus of anyone to assert otherwise.
His
Just plug them in,
coconut guns
the game essentially
can fire
does
in
itself.